As these Cromwells will be part of a large diorama, let's explore how to plan and prepare both large vignettes and dioramas. The essential components we need are 1. Inspiration for a theme, 2. The design elements that we're going to consider, and 3. Creating a physical plan actually written on paper. Inspiration can come from anywhere. Usually it starts with something we already find to be of personal interest to ourselves. A vehicle we may have served with, a unit our father or grandfather fought in, or even something as simple as a town that we knew. In this specific tutorial I'm using my current project, the 148 Tamiya group build on the Plastic Posse podcast Facebook page, in order to demonstrate how to complete the core planning processes used for a successful diorama. So I'm going to build 2 British Cromwell tanks in 148 scale, and they'll be set in Normandy in the weeks following D-Day in June-July 1944. Their opponents will be elements of the Fallschirmjäger regiments based in Normandy. These German paratroopers were fighting as elite light infantry by this stage of the war, but were assisted by the hedgerows of the French bocage. It's well known that these hedgerows were formidable defensive obstacles. Made of heaped soil and rock, they separated farming fields, often along the roadways and tracks across the farming areas. Roadways were sunken tunnels that made perfect ambush sites where German forces could create killing zones for the advancing Allied forces. And this is going to be the inspiration for this diorama. Well, obviously we're going to start this with the 148 Cromwells. Ordered 2 of those and they've arrived, and I'm just about to start building on those. I've also ordered some resin figures. Now, in 148 scale, wood figures, are really difficult to come by, so these are going to be an excellent choice. I've also ordered some paper trees in scale, and I'll be combining those with other elements like these shrubs and trees which I'll also make from scratch. When drawing up a plan, it's worthwhile starting with a piece of paper that's roughly the same size as the base that you're going to use, or at least to the same scale. So here I'm using a pen just to draw out the main features to begin with. At the top of the page you'll see a roadway with the 2 Cromwell tanks on it, a hedgerow behind it, and at the bottom corner, now partially obscured by my arm, is a hedgerow behind which the German forces will be. Now I'm sketching in here that there'll be possibly an old man, but my thoughts are I might even make it a young woman who's working as part of the French resistance, and that person is telling the British that there are German infantry very close to their current position. Unfortunately, if the Germans initiate the ambush, she might unfortunately be a casualty. Now the first physical stage here to the base is I'm starting with a picture frame, which I've removed the glass and elements from it that I don't require, just leaving the stiff base which I've glued in place. Now what I'm doing is checking the measurements here to ensure that I'm happy with the size of the base, that it's going to give me enough space to work with so that I can get all of these elements in place, considering the scale I'm working with. Now I'm used to working in 135 scale and building dioramas, so 148 is definitely going to give me a bit more room to play with, and I've got to readjust my thoughts here on how I'm going to use different elements. So I'm just checking the measurements a couple of times to make sure I've got that correct. And now I'm going to add on the foam to form the base. So this foam is an expanded foam, which you can buy in Australia from our largest warehouse known as Bunnings. And I'm just using a water-soluble acrid here, which is very similar to PVA, to glue that down onto the base. This material I've got here is effectively just some leftovers from previous projects, so I'm just going to use that to fill in the majority of it, and the gap in the middle and on the far end from the camera, I'll just use some offcuts to fill those up. This is just setting them in place with some pieces of 2mm balsa, because I will use 2mm balsa to frame the outer edge of the diorama, and these little plugs just allow me to set the foam blocks in place. So as you can see now, I've filled in those extra areas which were vacant, and I've cut some triangular shaped blocks to glue down, and they'll form the basis for the hedgerows. It's almost like a Toblerone bar, to be honest. So the hedgerow section for the area in front of the Fallschirmjäger is already in place, and this section runs alongside the roadway where the Cromwells will be. Using toothpicks, I can then skewer them down into the base and make sure that it sticks down well. Key point here is, as you put the toothpicks in, slide them in at an angle, not vertically. Otherwise, if you slide them in vertically, the foam will just want to lift off. Sliding them in at an obtuse angle here means that the foam can't lift up vertically and separate. It'll pin that in quite well, and then I'll use a pair of cutters just to cut the tips off the top of the toothpicks, leaving the bottom part of it in place. Push that last one in, take off a little piece of foam off the side. Now bear in mind, all of this surface is going to eventually be covered with VMS Smart Mud. And in order to allow that to adhere really well to the foam, although this foam does have a rough surface to it because it's an expanded foam, so it's got little pockets where the air was in it, I'm going to improve that a bit by using the base of a paintbrush and just gently push a few holes into the surface. It gives something extra for the Smart Mud to bite into and stops it from lifting off. With the building of the core elements of the base, the planning phase is now complete. So let's review the essential components of this process. Find your inspiration. What feels like a great theme to you? Research your building materials. What will you need to actually build this diorama? 3. Draw a plan on paper. This is your map to progress further towards completion. And 4. Build the base. This will confirm your plan, and you can of course make changes to the content of the diorama and adjust it if necessary. So much of this video is something I already discussed with my patrons, and if you haven't already considered joining them, now is as good a time as ever. I post regular content for all to access, plus early release video content, we chat about current projects, and I even post additional video content which is not shown here on this channel. This week I'd like to give a huge shout out to Rob at Red Beach One Studio, who is a great supporter of this channel and many others in our scale modelling community. Thanks Rob, you're a champion. Hopefully we will see you again next week as the Cromwell builds begin. They promise to be really interesting as there's going to be a lot of modifications with these. So thanks for watching.